and welcome to Newsroom, and I'm Sharmeen Ali. Today, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, is in Sri Lanka to boost trade ties between the two countries, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. He has visited there on the invitation of the Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. And he's accompanied by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Commerce Minister Abdul Razak Daud, and advisor to the Prime Minister on Overseas Pakistanis, Zulfikar Bukhari. And we'll be talking about what type of trade ties that they hope to enhance between the two countries. Also a monumental day for Pakistan, where the National Assembly jointly, showing a massive show of unity, has banned corporal punishment against children. And this is a huge development because this has been a problem in Pakistan, and it's a terrible act against children, and it's a big day for Pakistan, and the efforts of many people have gone into this, and we'll be talking to them, some of the activists, and we'll be talking about their efforts as well, and how important this is for Pakistan. Also, the WHO has reported that it's the 6th consecutive week of declining global coronavirus cases, which is a very, very positive sign. The reasons for this we'll be discussing as well. There's been an 11% decline in the last week leading up to February 21st in all coronavirus cases all over the world. So this is indeed a very big development, and hopefully we should be seeing some sort of a control coming on this pandemic, except for the case of new variants, which are still spreading quite rapidly across the world in all different countries. So to begin with, Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Sri Lanka, his 2-day visit, we'll be discussing bilateral trade ties between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Let's have a look at this package, and then we'll speak about this visit.
Pakistan and Sri Lanka agreed to enhance cooperation in countering terrorism and make joint efforts for debt relief in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. The understanding reached during a joint press conference by Prime Minister Imran Khan and his Sri Lankan counterpart Mahinda Rajapaksa in Colombo after one-on-one and delegation-level talks. Speaking on the occasion, Prime Minister Imran Khan said he directed the members of delegation to find means and ways to enhance trade and connectivity through CPEC that will help Sri Lanka to establish trading ties with Central Asia.
We also discussed other areas where we can enhance our trading ties. Pakistan suffered 10 years of the worst kind of terrorism, where we lost 70,000 people. Sri Lanka for 30 years combated terrorism. Pakistan played its part in helping Sri Lanka to resolve this problem.
He said the enhanced trading ties will bring both the countries together. He said the developed countries must help developing countries to get debt relief, as they have suffered the most due to COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister stated that the pandemic exposed huge inequality in the world and called upon international bodies to step in to support poor countries. He invited Sri Lankan Prime Minister Rajapaksa to visit Pakistan, as the country offered the biggest Buddhist heritage in the world. Prime Minister Imran Khan said Pakistan is planning to initiate projects to facilitate the pilgrimage at Buddhist holy sites. Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said they agreed to enhance cooperation in different sectors, including economy, trade, investment, technology, defense, and education. The Sri Lankan Prime Minister said the talks focused on important regional and international issues, including impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Rajapaksa said they also agreed to pursue the framework of Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Pakistan and Sri Lanka have signed 5 memoranda of understanding for cooperation in different sectors, including science and technology, health, education, and industry. The memoranda were signed in a ceremony held in Colombo and witnessed by Prime Minister Imran Khan and his Sri Lankan counterpart Mahinda Rajapaksa. The memoranda were signed between Boards of Investment of Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Imran Khan held one-on-one and delegation-level meetings with his Sri Lankan counterpart Mahinda Rajapaksa and his delegation in Colombo. The two sides discussed bilateral relations and regional situation. They also discussed bilateral cooperation in different sectors, including education, health, trade, and agriculture.
Now we have with us online Fahim Sardar, who's an economist who will be discussing this particular visit and its significance with us. Thank you for joining us, Fahim, online.
Thank you.
What I'd like to ask you now is that the historical significance of Pakistan and Sri Lanka's relations. Now, the Prime Minister said in his speech that Pakistan has helped Sri Lanka in combating terrorism. Your views on this, please.
Thank you. Of course, Pakistan went a long way in a very deep and very impactful way in helping Sri Lanka deal with a very a cancerous problem that was killing Sri Lankans left, right, and center. And Pakistan has been instrumental in bringing peace to that part of the region. And as you can clearly see, the warmth that Pakistan receives from Sri Lanka, there's a reason for it, and the warmth we want to give them, there's a reason for it, and that's a bilateral understanding and cooperative nature that we both possess for each other. In the region, both countries are trying to bring peace, harmony, and increased trade, and we have to understand that if there is going to be violence, there is going to be no trade, and Pakistan is a perfect example of that, and I've written about this as well, that you have to curtail violence. You cannot allow violence. There has to be zero tolerance regarding violence. That is the only way for a country to grow and to be able to think in which direction they're supposed to go. Coming back to Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka was in a lot of trouble, and Pakistan made sure that it stepped forward and had pulled out all those problems from their roots, not just from the branches. So as a result, Sri Lanka is now stable, and Pakistan and Sri Lanka are hopefully going to be moving together forward into the future.
Right. And do you think in this visit the topic of Islamophobia might come up as well, because there have been some issues with that regarding cremation and all going on in Sri Lanka, and that's against Muslim beliefs. So do you think, and Prime Minister Imran Khan has been very vocal about Islamophobia at every forum.
I think even our Honorable President, along with the Honorable Prime Minister, both have been quite vocal and very unequivocal of how they feel and how the Pakistanis feel about all of this. When it comes to Sri Lanka, I think the rights of the Muslims will eventually, in a very diplomatic way, come up. But it will come up at some point, because Pakistan has done that at the United Nations. So, I mean, the United Nations concerns the whole world. But here we have Pakistan talking to one country, a friendly country. So, of course, it's going to come up in a very polite way. And just to make it a two-way street, I think our Prime Minister has been unequivocal, categorical about the Buddhist heritage that Pakistan possesses, which is the biggest on earth. And I mean, would that not appeal to the Buddhists living in not only Sri Lanka, but China, Thailand, Canada, and America, and throughout the world? So Pakistan is a pluralistic country, and it expects other countries to be pluralistic as well. There are issues everywhere, there are problems everywhere, but we are driving forward our rights in a respectful manner and trying to give others their rights in a respectful manner as well.
Right, absolutely. Now, also the topic that comes up is how both the countries, being developing countries, have been hit by COVID-19. The economies have been hit very hard. So how can they work together in increasing their ties, bilateral ties, in order to overcome this effect that COVID-19 has had on both the countries' economies?
COVID has had I've said this on multiple forums and many TV programs, that COVID was, the main thrust of COVID was for the first 3 months from April, May, and June, but the effect of those 3 months was equal to a world war, economically, socially, and I'll focus on economics right now. So right now, Pakistan has come out of COVID in a much stronger manner, as was earlier expected. Sri Lanka has had its issues. Every country has had its issues. So focusing only on Pakistan and Sri Lanka, basically, it is in both countries' interest, that we increase our trade with each other. And if you notice the MOUs that have been signed, technology, trade, other things, and then you've got military down at number 3 or number 4, you can see that both countries are trying to get together closer. What happens is that if you have peace in the region, like the moment Raddul Fasad started, our economy started to stabilize and improve. Likewise, when Sri Lanka stabilized, its economy started to improve. But that's step one. Countries have to trade with each other, and they have to trade on their strengths. Likewise, it is advisable to trade within the region rather than trading far off. So Pakistan and Sri Lanka are not far off, so it's advisable for both countries to start trading with each other in things that they are perhaps, they don't have a comparative advantage. That is going to save both countries a lot of foreign exchange and build up their reserves as well as their value. If countries are just going to trade with the typical profile that we see in some countries, even Pakistan has that profile which we're trying to change. So you end up getting stuck in the same kind of problems. If we can, for example, trade in each other's currencies, I'm just giving one example, that would be a huge boost to both countries because we would then become less dependent on a third currency. That's just one example. So imagine if we start trading more in things that where we can help each other.
Right, definitely. And at the moment, the trade ties, as you were also mentioning, are very limited. They're about 359 million in bilateral trade in the last fiscal year. So which are the areas where this can actually be enhanced, other than trading in each other's currencies, which you just said? What are the other sectors? I mean, they will be talking in delegation level talks on many different areas, but where do you think is the strongest sort of point where the two countries can come together?
I think there are many points, not just a couple or one alone. For example, Pakistan is doing very well in services. We have to increase our service footprint in Sri Lanka. Our IT, our banking, our financial markets, all of them can be taken to Sri Lanka. Take, for instance, our trade in slightly advanced mechanized equipments. Pakistan is becoming a tech country. When I say tech, I'm not talking about IT, I'm talking about machinery. Pakistan has started building aircraft. We're going to sell them jets. So there are many things that we can do, and tourism is just one of those things. And believe me, tourism is going to be a big ticket item because once Pakistan starts opening up its doors to the Buddhists and to all the other tourists who just want to come and see the other side of Pakistan, it's going to be quite helpful for all countries, especially Pakistan and Sri Lanka. What I want to stress here is that it is extremely important for two countries to give each other some kind of increased importance. That helps preserve value and that helps increase their reserves in both countries. And both countries need to do this very quickly because we're coming out of a COVID situation.
Right. Also, Pakistan and Sri Lanka have also had pretty strong military ties as well in the past, specifically where we were talking about combating terrorism. So your views on that, please.
Pakistan is a very powerful country, and we should be proud of that. And Pakistan is the only country that has won a fourth-generation war. We should be proud of it. Unfortunately, we lost too many people, and it was brought upon us, and we won. So let's celebrate that for a minute. Kudos to all the people who fought, and salam and respect to all those who lost their lives. We have to be able to project our abilities, our security abilities, which, frankly speaking, you started this whole conversation from that point. Sri Lanka understands our security capacity, our strengths, and our ability to resolve a problem. So if you've got a strong military and good military ties, then you can build upon that. And once again, to drag economics into this, we have to remember high-tech military equipment is typically it's a big ticket item when it comes to international trade. So Pakistan has a lot to sell to Sri Lanka. And by the way, our economy is almost 3 times their size, or possibly more. So there's a lot that we have to offer them.
Right, and also Sri Lanka has a very robust tourism industry. You hear about people visiting there all the time. How can Pakistan learn from Sri Lanka about how they've boosted their tourism industry?
I think we already are, and we already were learning, and it's just that we've just started to open up because now things have become secure in Pakistan. Earlier that we had issues, we had enhanced interference from other countries. In Sri Lanka, you will notice that wherever there's peace, there is tourism. So what any country has to do is provide logistical access to that place. Logistics, it's about logistics. If starting off in a very layman term, if you can provide logistics, you can take a tourist any place, whether it's the center of a desert or it's the center of a rainforest, or whether it's on top of a mountain. uh, we can see how the world flocks to Sri Lanka for its beaches, for its forests, and for its culture. So they will flock to Pakistan as well. But we have to, and we have to work hard on this. We have to project the true Pakistan, not the Pakistan that our enemies are trying to project and have been projecting for the past 17 years. So we have to be a little more aggressive in projecting our real face, which is the face of plurality. We opened up Kartarpur, and look what we got in return. Our mosques have been destroyed in India. So here we're trying to open up to the world. We're trying to open up to the Sikhs. We're trying to open up to the Buddhists. We're trying to open up to our other Muslim brothers. And that itself is just a stepping stone. I just want to repeat that if we can provide logistical access to whichever places we want traffic in, that's usually the starting point.
Right, and the Prime Minister also invited the Sri Lankan Prime Minister Rajapaksa to visit Pakistan due to its very large Buddhist heritage that we've got over there. Do you see that trip happening anytime in the future?
I think it might not be too far into the future. I mean, here I'm just guessing is my professional assessment, because actually Sri Lanka also has a lot to gain from Pakistan, and it of course goes beyond tourism and regional stability, geoeconomics laced with geopolitics. Those are the main things. Pakistan and Sri Lanka have far bigger interests that need to be firmed up, perhaps, and that will not happen if they're not going to meet each other. So if he comes within the next 6 months, I would not be surprised at all.
Right, and I think that we don't project the vast amount of Buddhist presence, the heritage that you have in our country, because you have Taxila, which is one of the oldest universities in the world. I mean, this is so significant, and there's so many other sites like that, which are so special to people, not just of Sri Lanka, but of many other Buddhist countries.
Pakistan is opening up, and we have started talking about the Buddhist culture that Pakistan enjoys. We have recently created a Buddhist trail, which is going to be advertised to the whole world. That there's going to be it's like a dedicated trail starting from one side of a province going to the other province, where people will get to see the Buddhist heritage. Not just for Buddhists, not only Buddhists will come and see this, but I think I'd go myself and see it, because to be honest, I mean, we haven't ourselves taken too much interest in the diversity that our country enjoys. How many of us go to Taxila, which is right next to Islamabad, to see the ancient sites? And unfortunately, not many of us, but we're starting this thing off, and to tell a Buddhist country that we're opening up the Buddhist sites for you, that means a lot. And the way we opened up the Sikh sites to the Sikhs. So Pakistan is opening up, because this is the true Pakistan, a pluralistic country that focuses on trade, economics, and regional harmony.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Fahim Sardar, for joining us on our program today. And indeed, this is going to be a very fruitful visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan in Sri Lanka. We saw the warm welcome he received when he arrived there yesterday, and now our delegation level talks are being held to discuss different areas of trade, and which encompass health and education, culture, tourism, defense and military ties, and science and technology, agriculture. So there's a lot of potential to enhance the trade volume between the countries, which is at the moment very limited at $359 million in the last fiscal year, and also to revive the economies of the two countries, as all developing countries have really, their economies have been hit very hard due to COVID-19. So that seems to be going very well, and there should be some positive developments from this visit. And now going on to a very, very big significant development that's taken place in Pakistan, which is a ban by the National Assembly on corporal punishment. Now, this is a very, very huge deal, because previously there has been a record of children getting injured in cases, terrible cases of corporal punishment cases that we've seen in Pakistan. And now jointly the National Assembly has passed a bill on Tuesday which bans corporal punishment. So we'll be talking about that. But first, let's have a look at what's happening in this area of corporal punishment in schools.
The National Assembly of Pakistan passed a bill to ban corporal punishment in educational institutions and seminaries in the capital. The bill was moved by MNA Mehnaz Akbar Aziz, while singer Shehzad Roy also advocated for the passage of the bill. The ICT Prohibition of Corporal Punishment Bill calls for banning all forms of corporal punishment in educational institutions, including formal, non-formal, and seminaries in both the public and private sectors, as well as childcare institutions and rehabilitation centers. According to the bill, experts have consensus that physical punishment can have adverse consequences on the child's health, particularly their behavior and emotional well-being. Pakistan was among the first countries in the world to ratify the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child on 12th of November 1990. This essentially meant Islamabad had made a formal commitment to take all measures within its power to protect the rights of children as defined in the convention. In September 2019, Hunain Bilal, a student of class 10th, was tortured to such an extent by his teacher that he died. In the case of Hunain, the perpetrator was arrested. But still, there are countless cases of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse of children at the educational institutions. The greatest hurdle in elimination of corporal punishment was the absence of any proper legal framework. Passage of the bill is indeed a great and important decision taken by the authorities. But at the end of the day, it is the mindset of hitting children, abuse, and the belief of parents and teachers that this is how children should be disciplined.
So indeed, a very big historical development for Pakistan, and now we're going to be introducing our guests in our studio. We've got with us Ms. Afshan Tehseen, who's the chairperson of the National Commission on the Rights of the Child. Thank you so much for joining us on our program. But first, let's have a look at the salient features of this bill that's been passed in the National Assembly. Right. So having a look at this video, Afshan, thank you so much for being with us again. There's so many things that come under corporal punishment. And when you look at the list of what corporal punishment is, that list itself is very disturbing to see that this actually takes place in schools. Corporal punishment is considered to be the injury of any kind, which includes slapping children, whipping them, beating them with sticks, shoes or wooden spoons, shaking them, biting them, grabbing them by the hair, pulling by their ears. The bill says these are actions that were actually taking place towards children in schools.
Definitely, thank you very much, Sharmeen. Today is a great day, and we must say that we should applaud for all those who were behind it. And it is an achievement, you know, in the best interest of children in Pakistan, because if you really see the social practices in Pakistan, the harmful practices we say, but otherwise there are a few things which are accepted in Pakistan as a normal thing, and that is called disciplining the children. And it is not actually taking place in schools, but in all formal and informal settings. To name a place where children you know, are maybe working or playing or studying or living, or you know, where you found children, it exists. So that is one of the key reasons that, you know, children suffer at the hands of all those who abuse them in terms of corporal punishment. And the bigger you know, I must say the harm of it is not only a physical harm, but it's the emotional, mental harm that it causes,
Yes.
the trauma it causes, and for the rest of life, those children who are subjected to such physical abuse, violence, are not only keep themselves away from a normal living, normal development of a positive human being, but also they can be they take it on others once they grow up. So it is
Absolutely.
something which is perpetual, which is a vicious cycle, and it is something I must say a great achievement and development today in the best interest of children of Pakistan.
Absolutely, it's a very big day for Pakistan. But just going back to the fact that this is the year 2021 and this has been happening even till now in our country, it's very disturbing on its own, because the bill also says keeping children in painful situations is torture, and as is pouring boiling water on them, and then child abuse, humiliation, defamation, intimidation, and terrorizing of children are all punishable as well. So a lot of things can come under these: child abuse, humiliation, defamation, intimidation, terrorizing of children. That's all mental abuse as well that goes on. And I'm sorry to say, but I just feel that there's very little protection of children in our country. This is a big, big step forward, but how do you change the thinking of people to stop behaving this way towards children?
I think this is one of the most important questions, which each one of us should put, because until and unless we work on the prevention aspect of any issue in Pakistan, we cannot attain a major change. Because until and unless there is realization and then awareness among all those, be it parents, be it teachers, be it caretakers or employers, that this is something which is very harmful for the children, and it is not a harm to an individual, it is a harm to the entire society.
Yes.
And the realization should be there, the sensitization should be there, and then there should be accountability. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, there is not as such thing available, we say sensitization or realization, and on the other hand, since there was no such legal cover available, so there was no accountability also. So there are lots of factors. If you see the reason of dropouts from schools, corporal punishment is one of the factors. If you see other formal and informal settings, if you see social media, it is bombarded with issues of child, abuse in terms of violence, in terms of corporal punishment, in terms of harassment, exploitation, physical harm, mental harm. All such practices are there, and every day all the TV channels, all the print and electronic media is filled with such issues. So this is something very important. We will definitely create a deterrence for the children of Pakistan, but for that we have to mainstream it in terms of its implementation.
Right, a lot of work will need to be done.
Lots
going
of
forward.
work in terms of its rules of implementation, and then how it is limited to the ICT, but how it will be the other provinces after 18 amendment will take it and have the similar legislation in other provinces. Up till now we have legislation only in Sindh.
Right.
But that also does not take cognizance of the criminal offense. It is again dealt as minor offense. The good thing about this legislation is that now the victims can also go to courts,
right.
if any offense occurs. So there is a window of opportunity to go and seek justice, which is not there in Sindh case.
Right. So now this now applies to all education institutes, public and private, childcare institutions, formal, informal, religious institutions, foster care, rehabilitation centers, and any other type of alternative care settings. So now all of these institutions are going to have to be monitored somehow. Do you think they're going to have to implement some kind of a reporting mechanism if that does happen?
Let me just tell you, since on behalf of National Commission on the Rights of Child, since one of the mandate of this National Commission on the Rights of Child is monitoring and oversight. It's a statutory body. So its role is to monitor violations of child rights in Pakistan. It has been established last year on February 28 by the government of Pakistan. So we were taking actions against certain cases like child domestic labor or maybe other issues, and we would always be falling short of legal covers. Like recently we sent a letter to PEMRA advising them to telecast and issue notifications to all the TV channels to have such programs where all the influencers and religious influencers and other key people are invited to have debate on, violence and abuse and corporal punishment. But again, if you have a legal cover, it becomes more forceful. Because you always then give reference of that legal cover. Now that we have it, so we can very easily, the National Commission on the Right of Child, using its mandate and the power which has been given to it, can ensure enforcement by sending it to all the relevant institutions or any other settings, or in case we receive any complaint from any complainant.
Right. So now there are also going to be, there are punitive measures in place now, which is an effective enough deterrence. I don't see any kind of prison time, but the minor penalties will are going to be censure, withholding, promotion or increment, no promotion or recovery of any pecuniary loss caused to
and
the
suspension
government.
also.
Right, and then major penalties will be demotion, compulsory retirement, removal from service, dismissal from service. Fair enough. I mean, the perpetrator is not going to be able to harm any more children. Do you think that's enough of a deterrent for teachers and all to stop this practice?
I think this minor should be a bit more, because this should be a bit more for the children, because in our society, it is already an accepted norm. Nobody thinks it's something bad. Rather, yesterday when we were putting such things on social media, so many responses from public came that you don't want us to discipline our children. So this is not fair. So these type of responses were also there that made us very much worried that we have to change the mindset of society, and plus there has to be some deterrence, some rule of law under which this should not be done, because we all know people don't have awareness, but if you ask psychologists and all the child related people, they know how much harmful effect it has on the mind of child, and they cannot be live like a healthy person, cannot have education, cannot have other activities if they are subjected to violence. So I must say that there should be zero tolerance. There should not be any such provision or loophole or any such space left for anyone to do any sort of physical harm or corporal punishment on the children.
Right, absolutely, because often in such cases the harm inflicted on a child is so extreme that the children have died from this. Hanan Bilal, he died due to torture by his teacher, which we saw in the report. There was also a teenage boy in a private school in Lahore who died after getting a severe beating by his teacher. His classmates reported that to the police. In Texila, this has happened as well. A teacher was suspended, and then an 8-year-old boy also fractured his hand and had bruises. So many different cases. So you can't really wait to change the mindset of people, because many people will still continue to be cruel to those who are weaker than them. So there has to be this type of punishment in place.
No, very, very rightly mentioned, and this is such a good step towards that. Positive development for the children, because and this is so inclusive. One good thing about this act is that it is entirely in consonance with the international, legislation on child rights. So the SOPs are exactly the same, which requires all the, best interest of the child, and his emotional well-being, physical well-being should be intact. So it is in consonance and in, compliant with the international legislation also, which is called Convention on the Rights of Child.
And Pakistan has ratified this convention.
Pakistan had signed it in
ago.
89, and in 1990 Pakistan had ratified it.
Wow.
And in that context, we were obligated to provide all the required legislative framework in Pakistan.
And it's now
so
40 years later.
30 years later.
We are actually, now we've got a bill passed.
This is one of the key clauses. And the good thing about this act is, if you see it says it includes all the formal and non-formal settings. It includes all the religious settings, public and private settings, child care institutions, including foster care, rehabilitation centers, and any alternative care settings. So both public and private. So it enlarges its area of jurisdiction, I must say. So lots of such settings other than schools, or maybe formal people could not do anything, because they had no such law which they can apply and maybe complain, or maybe the citizens can complain, maybe passers-by complain, maybe neighbors can complain. So this is something which will now pave the way for at a landmark achievement for other provinces to follow the same best practices. And at here, I want to congratulate the relevant MNA, Ms. Mehnaz Akbar Aziz, and also Ms. Shiri Mazari, because this is the first time both the government in power and the opposition were on the same page, and they supported this, joint this initiative. And Ms. Shiri Mazari was also the one who also said that initially there was a committee proposed that there should be a government committee who will receive complaints, but she was the one who said no, it should be, the province should be that people should be going to the court for any sort of complaint. So it is very easy for people to go to court and complain against any such issue of corporal punishment.
So would that be the families who would go to court? Because I would just like to give an example. Like when I was a child, I was growing up in New York. In our elementary school, we were given phone numbers for child abuse hotlines, that in case your parent hits you, you can call up this number, let alone teachers or anybody else. And as a kid, I took it home and I showed it to my parents. I was feeling very proud. So the children themselves, do they have any kind of means to get help themselves under this bill?
I think that would be in the later step to follow, because that definitely includes all the awareness raising, strategies, and how those SOPs will be developed, how the public caregivers and the children themselves will be engaged, and there will be such supporting strategies and supportive services provided by the government. For example, helpline would be one such service. You have a helpline, and on the other hand, that children should be equipped, and they should be informed, they should be trained, they should be aware, they should be given all those life skills where they know if this is harm, where they have to go. Definitely first they have to complain to the parents, then to the concerned, if they are in educational setting or if they are in any employment setting, but it should be as much common, this provision, that all the public should know about it. So the main feature of any legislation in Pakistan is that generally the general public don't know, particularly the vulnerable and poor don't know at all. So we have to make such developments public through use of electronic media, social media, print media, that people should know what are the avenues available to them. In case of any harm, where they have to go, or which government department they have to approach, how they can get justice. So these are certain measures which now the concerned departments should be taking in terms of implementation of this law.
Yes, when I was earlier mentioning that there's very little protection of children at the moment, this is a big step forward. In many cases, the same children are also being abused at home, so they don't really know what abuse is or violence is, because for many of them it's normal to be slapped or hit around and sworn at and things like that. It happens in their families, and we know that it happens in towns and villages all over Pakistan. So how do we build the child's knowledge and self-esteem itself in mass awareness and all campaigns to let them know that this is not right?
I think at one hand there has to be the role of state and the government relevant departments in terms of mass awareness campaigns. On the other hand, positive parenting in one such area in which Pakistan has not done enough. So we need to work a lot on positive parenting. Third is educational settings. In educational settings, there is need to have certain provisions in terms of certain life skills, and also children should be taught about self-protection and the certain key critical information they should be knowing about it. That in case of any issue, where they can approach, how they can, complain. Complaint mechanisms should be there in place. The child protection policies should be there in place in all the care institutes, in all the settings where children reside or live, or maybe they work, or maybe they study. So there are certain prerequisites like child protection policies, complaint mechanisms, and then helplines, and then awareness raising. So we have to connect the dots to make all that happen.
Right. Thank you so much, Afshan Tehseen, for being with us on the program today. And indeed, it's a very good day for us that we've taken this big step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you very much.
So finally, the WHO has reported that this is the 6th consecutive week of declining global coronavirus cases all over the world. In February, there was a drop of 11% in the week leading up to February 21st, and this was the 6th week of declining cases. Now, so far, There's been a total of 110 million COVID-19 cases all over the world and 2.4 million deaths since the beginning of the pandemic attributed to COVID-19. That's an extremely large number of deaths and cases which did not seem to be stopping. That we saw a decline and then there was a resurgence in the winter months, and fortunately now we're seeing another decline. The highest cases at the moment, new cases, are being reported by the United States, Brazil, France, Russia and India. And also another concern is the WHO fears that the new variants are also increasing. The new variant that began in the UK, the B117 variant, is now spread in 101 countries. So there might again be a new wave of transmissions coming up in this next spring season. So we'll have to have a look at this new variant and see where that takes us. But so far there has been a huge decline in COVID-19 cases across the world, according to the WHO. So that is some very positive news that we all needed to hear. That's all for today's program. Thank you for watching Newsroom, and we will see you next time.